Quick favor. I'm grinding to 1,000 subscribers and I need your help. If you enjoy MLB content, hit subscribe right now. Takes 1 second. All right, let's get into it. 13. That's the number of top 25 free agents still sitting at home right now with no contract, no team, and no idea what happens next. And here's the part that should terrify every one of them. Spring training starts in 5 weeks. Position players report in February, and the phone isn't ringing. Jim Bowden just dropped a bomb on foul territory that nobody is talking about. He said something that changes how we should view this entire offseason. The Soto deal and the Guerrero deal are not setting the market. Teams are treating them as aberrations, outliers, one-time events that don't represent what anyone else should expect. And if that's true, then Kyle Tucker, Cody Bellinger, Alex Bregman, and Bo Bichette are all operating under a delusion that's about to cost them millions. Let me explain what's happening here because the surface story doesn't capture how strange this is. Kyle Tucker's camp walked into negotiations expecting somewhere between $400 and $500 million. They pointed at Vladdy's $500 million from Toronto. They pointed at Soto's $765 million from the Mets. They said this is the new baseline. This is what elite hitters cost now. And every single team said the same thing. No. But here's where it gets darker. The Yankees looked at Tucker. The Mets looked at Tucker. Both of New York's mega market franchises evaluated him and decided he wasn't worth the pressure. Bowden confirmed that both organizations have concerns about whether Tucker can handle playing in that spotlight. They don't believe he has the mental makeup to perform under a microscope. That's not about talent. That's about temperament. And when the two teams most likely to overpay both walk away from the same player for the same reason, that's a red flag that follows you everywhere. Think about that for a second. Tucker's entire strategy relied on a bidding war between rich franchises desperate for his bat. Remove the Yankees and Mets from that equation, and what do you have left? The Dodgers, maybe? A few mid-market teams who won't spend what he wants. Suddenly, the $400 million dream becomes something much smaller, and his camp still hasn't adjusted. Now let's talk about Bellinger because this situation is somehow even more ridiculous. The Yankees want him back. They've made him their priority all offseason. They believe he solves their lineup imbalance. They're too left-handed. They need a right-handed bat who can play multiple positions. Bellinger checks every box. But there's a problem. Boras won't accept anything less than what Bellinger made last year. He earned $27.5 million in 2025. So Boras is pushing for a deal that averages at least that much over multiple years. And the Yankees are sitting there saying, we have other options. Here's what makes this fascinating. The Yankees aren't desperate. They have Jason Dominguez waiting. They have Spencer Jones ranked 4th in their farm system ready to contribute. They can walk away from Bellinger tomorrow and still field a competitive outfield. That's leverage. Real leverage. And Boras doesn't know how to operate in a world where teams have backup plans. But wait, it gets stranger. The Mets have been connected to Bellinger too. They just traded Brandon Nimmo and Jeff McNeil. They clearly need outfielders. Bellinger makes sense for them. Except David Stearns just refused to give Pete Alonso a 5-year commitment. He let Alonso walk rather than guarantee him long-term security. So how does Stearns justify turning around and giving Bellinger that exact deal? The same length, the same money, the same age-related risk. The optics don't work. The logic doesn't hold. And Bellinger's market just got smaller. There's been whispers about mystery teams. The Pirates have come up. Pittsburgh had a strong offseason adding offense. Bellinger would be a massive addition. But here's the reality. Does Cody Bellinger actually want to play in Pittsburgh? Does he want to leave the bright lights for a small market rebuilding team? Probably not. Bowden mentioned that Bellinger prefers staying in New York. If that falls through, he'd like to return to the Dodgers. That's a very limited list of acceptable destinations. And when you limit your market, you limit your leverage. Now let's address the elephant in the room, Alex Bregman. This is where the story turns into something almost tragic. Last year, the Detroit Tigers offered him a 6-year deal worth $171.5 million. They wanted him. They put real money on the table. Bregman said no. He asked for an opt-out after 2025. Detroit said fine, we'll give you one after 2026. Bregman said make the total money higher then. Detroit walked away. So he signed a 3-year deal with Boston worth $120 million with $60 million deferred. That's about $31 million per year in present value. Not bad, but not the long-term security he wanted. And now here he is again, free agent at 31 years old. looking for that massive deal he turned down. Except the market has changed. The Red Sox are interested, but they're offering something similar to what Detroit offered before. 6 years, $170 million range. The Cubs are circling. The Diamondbacks are involved. But nobody is rushing to close anything. Nobody is desperate to lock him up before spring training. But here's what nobody wants to say out loud. Bregman carries baggage that other players don't. The 2017 Astros cheating scandal, the trash cans, the stolen signs, the World Series that fans still call tainted. Bregman stood at a press conference in 2020 and said he was really sorry about the choices made by his team, the organization, and himself. He asked fans to forgive him. He promised he learned from it. But some fans never forgot. Some organizations don't want that controversy attached to their team. Fair or not, that stain follows him into every negotiation. Cody Bellinger himself said it best back in 2020. He said everyone knows the Astros stole the ring from the Dodgers. He called the punishment weak. He said Altuve stole an MVP from Aaron Judge. That kind of anger doesn't disappear. And now Bregman is asking teams to invest 9 figures in a player who will be booed in half the stadiums he visits. That's a factor. Maybe not the deciding factor, but a factor. Let's talk about Bo Bichette because his situation reveals something important about how teams are thinking right now. He's 27 years old. He's coming off a great season where he hit .3111 with 18 home runs and 94 RBI. He had 181 hits, tied for second in baseball. He had 44 doubles, ranked second as well. He helped carry Toronto to the World Series and nearly became the hero with that 3-run bomb off Ohtani in Game 7. On paper, he should be one of the most sought-after free agents in baseball. But teams are hesitating. Bowden revealed that organizations have concerns about his bat speed. They're worried about barrel percentage. They're looking at his defensive metrics and seeing decline. They're asking themselves whether committing $150 or $200 million to a player who might be aging faster than expected is worth the risk about how he'll age. That's not supposed to happen with players his age. He announced willingness to move to second base. That should have opened his market completely. Instead, it created questions about whether he can actually play the position at a high level. The Red Sox are interested because they have Trevor Story at shortstop, but Boston might prefer Bregman depending on how both markets develop. Detroit could slot him in at short, but that hinges on what happens with Tucker and Bregman first. Everyone is waiting. Nobody is acting. Here's what Jim Bowden understands that most fans don't. The upcoming collective bargaining agreement is going to change everything. There's probably going to be a salary floor. There might be a salary cap. Teams don't know what the new rules will look like. So why commit $400 million to a player right now when the entire financial structure of baseball could change in 2 years? That's not being cheap. That's being strategic. The Pirates are a perfect example. They added Brandon Lowe and Ryan O'Hearn this offseason. They're improving the offense. They're preparing for a world where they'll be forced to spend. But they're not going crazy. They're being calculated. Meanwhile, the big market teams that haven't spent as much are waiting to see what the CBA brings. They don't want to be locked into massive deals right before the rules change. That's planning. That's foresight. And players like Tucker and Bellinger don't want to hear it. One comment on the foul territory video summed up what millions of fans are thinking. Maybe the agents are asking for absurd contracts and no GM is taking the bait. That's it. That's the entire offseason in one sentence. Players looked at Juan Soto's $765 million and thought that's the new floor. They looked at Vladdy's $500 million and thought everyone gets that now. They were wrong. Soto is a generational talent. He's 26 years old. He's a career .290 hitter with elite plate discipline and consistent power. He's going to produce for another decade minimum. Kyle Tucker is not Juan Soto. Cody Bellinger is not Juan Soto. Alex Bregman is not Juan Soto. Bo Bichette is not Juan Soto. And teams know the difference even if agents don't want to admit it. Another fan put it perfectly. Tucker should not be in the same zip code as Vladdy Jr. Vladimir Guerrero signed for $500 million because he's a franchise cornerstone who can carry a team for 15 years. He's 25 years old with back-to-back MVP caliber seasons. Tucker is 29, coming off an injury with a second half that left much to be desired. Those are not comparable situations. The market is telling us exactly what these players are worth, and it's less than their agents promised. Here's what nobody wants to acknowledge. Scott Boras built his career on creating bidding wars. He's a master at leveraging one team's interest against another. He waits until February if he has to. He holds out for every dollar, and usually it works. But this year feels different. This year there's no bidding war, there's no desperation. Teams are walking away from the table. They're saying no. And Boras has no answer for it. He can hold press conferences, he can leak stories to reporters, he can create narratives about mystery teams. But at the end of the day, if nobody wants to pay the price doesn't exist. That's the lesson of this offseason. The market isn't broken because teams won't spend. Dylan Cease got $210 million from Toronto. Pete Alonso signed with Baltimore. Teams are spending. They're just not overspending anymore. The clock is ticking, spring training is 5 weeks away, position players report in February, and some of baseball's biggest names still don't know where they'll be playing in 2026. That's pressure, real pressure, because the longer they wait, the fewer options they have. Teams fill their rosters, budgets get allocated, backup plans get executed, and suddenly that $400 million dream becomes a 2-year prove-it deal with opt-outs that puts you right back in this same position next winter. One fan on the video said something that stuck with me. Fans should blame Boras, period. Maybe they're right. Or maybe this is just what happens when expectations meet reality and reality wins. Tucker wanted Vladdy money. The market said no. Bellinger wanted 5 years guaranteed. The market said we'll see. Bregman wanted to reset the third base market. The market said prove it first. Bichette wanted to be paid like an elite shortstop. The market said you're a second baseman now. The biggest free agents in baseball thought they controlled the offseason. They thought teams would line up to overpay. They thought Soto's deal changed everything. But here's what they forgot. Soto is Soto. Everyone else is fighting for what's left. And right now, what's left is getting smaller by the day.